infected. It's spreading like a brush fire.
What are you talking about?
If one of them's got it, then 10 of them have got it now. And if one of them gets out of Cedar Creek, we have a very interesting problem.
If that bug gets out of there, 260 million Americans will be dead or dying.
Well, you might remember that. That was a great scene from the 1990s thriller Outbreak. What happens when a deadly virus spreads and can't be stopped? Well, it's a terrifying thought, but it could also be very real. And here to tell us what this all means is author of The Blood Notes of Peter Mallow, Dr. Paul Boors. Dr. Boors, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for asking me.
I am so excited to talk to you this morning. I want to begin by just learning a little bit about you, how long you've been researching and writing and studying in this field.
Well, it's been over 20 years that I've been at Galveston, where we have the highest level infectious disease laboratory, like you have in here in San Antonio.
Right.
And mostly I do research on heart and blood vessels, that sort of thing, including viruses and organisms that we worry about, like an outbreak.
Yes.
So it's been quite a long time.
Quite a long time. Now, you wrote the book, The Blood Notes of Peter Mallow. It's fictional work.
Yes.
It's a novel. But working in, I guess, the field of bioterrorism inspired you to write this book. First of all, let's talk about bioterrorism before we talk about the book. What is it, and what does it mean to all of us?
Well, we worry about organisms like viruses, Ebola, those kinds of organisms, or smallpox that might get into the hands of a bad person. A little like the anthrax outbreaks that occurred after 9/11. Those are the things that we worry about. And because of that, the government, the NIH and the CDC and the government overall has started some of these laboratories. There are 4 of the high-level laboratories, and we're fortunate to have 2 in Texas. We have one here at Southwestern, and then the others in Galveston. And these are, you know, the idea is to study these kinds of organisms so that we can make vaccines, so that we can be prepared, and so that we can diagnose it. If a bad organism were to come into the United States, it might take several weeks or months to figure it out.
Yes. How safe, Dr. Boors, are these high-level labs?
Well, the question you're asking really is how safe are they for the community?
For the community.
And that's really, that's an issue because they're really very safe as far as the organisms we use, the bugs in the lab being confined in the laboratory. The biggest danger is to us who work in the laboratory, really.
Sure.
People make mistakes, drop things, can stick themselves, and that comes out, those kinds of mistakes are in my book, actually.
Right.
Those sorts of things are illustrated. So the laboratory is like a fine instrument. It's built, it's very expensive. You don't want to go with a low bid on one of these laboratories. And the laboratory is just an incredibly concise kind of instrument, really. Everything into it and out of it is taken care of by boiling and so forth and sterilizing. You wear the spacesuit that you see in the movies and that sort of thing with a hose, an air hose going into the laboratory.
Right.
And the laboratory is also shut down if anything goes wrong by computers and so forth. So the escape of an organism is pretty minimal, and also the organisms are usually spread by mosquito or something like that, so that even if one gets out, it's not all that dangerous. So it's really more of a danger to the person working in the laboratory, the scientists.
Yes, indeed. Let's talk a little bit about your book and what it's comprised of.
Well, it's written in the first person. Peter Mallow is a scientist who's working in one of these laboratories, and he's hot on the trail of a very bad bird virus, like the bird flu that was an outbreak a couple of years ago. And he gets the scientist's worst nightmare, which is a crazy student comes into the lab.
Right.
So he starts to write in his diary, sort of, and that's what the book is about, his notes.
You know, so many movies, Dr. Boors, have been done about this and the outbreak of viruses and animals carrying the viruses. How at risk are we? I mean, what are the chances that it really could happen? I mean, when we leave the movie theater, we think, oh, that's a movie, but is it a real threat?
I think the bigger threat is the viruses changing on their own, like the bird virus that I illustrate in the book, for instance, that can change on its own to become more dangerous and more virulent. And that's really the big danger, and that's why we have to have these laboratories, really, in San Antonio and in Galveston and elsewhere. They need to be put where there are scientists who know how to work with these organisms so that they can study them. So if the organism gets worse, like the fellow who got on the plane with TB, you know, the drug-resistant organisms, the methicillin-resistant staphylococcus, all those are really products of our environment and our modern world. And I think that's the bigger risk, really.
Sure. And I think for a lot of us who don't work in the labs and we don't know all of the things that are being done, it's frightful. It's scary because we don't know what to expect, when to expect it. What scares you as a scientist working in there every day? I mean, what scares you? Because obviously you're a scientist, but you're a human being. What do you find most fearful?
I guess the most scariest thing is organisms themselves becoming worse. And an outbreak like we had in 1917, 1918, the great Spanish flu that killed 50 million people, an organism like that would be much worse. And in fact, in the book, I sort of addressed that because this crazy student toys with an organism and changes the bug. He genetically alters the bug, you know, and so that's a big part of the plot. And that sort of thing is worrisome, too.
I remember right after 9/11, there was a talk about, you know, terrorism and high alert, and we used to see level 1, 2, 3, 4. What are the different levels, Dr. Boor?
I don't know. You know, I'm not really too aware of that because it seems to me like every time I'm in the airport, which is quite a bit, it's always orange.
It's always orange at the same time. Yes, yes, yes.
I think it's hard to know.
It's really hard to know. Yeah. And you know what? If something happens, is there anything people sitting at home can really do to protect themselves other than be wise when information comes across the TV screen or whatever?
You listen to the experts, I think, and just do what the experts tell you to do.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. That's what I think anyone would do.
How long did it take you to write the book?
Well, I actually started it around the time of the anthrax attacks, and a big part of the plot, the scientist who's undergoing life changes himself and so forth, has to do with that kind of period of the strain that we all felt around 9/11 and the anthrax attacks. That's when I started it, so it took quite a while to finish.
Yes, and is there a book too? Is there a follow-up to Peter Mallow? Is he going to have some more blood notes?
There may be.
There might be more notes.
A lot of my readers are asking for one, yes.
Dr. Boor, thank you. It's important to be informed. That's all we can do. The book is Blood Notes of Peter Mallow. You can order your copy at paulboor.com, also at amazon.com. Dr. Boor, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Well, we'll tell you why a Sex and the City star had to do a double take. That's next in Dish.